Hey guys, just for fun, I thought I'd just take a look at Lady Gaga's chart, even though we don't have the exact birth time, because I was just watching one of her music videos and was just really impressed with it yet again. It's an older music video for the song "Applause." At this point, it's a few years old, but I don't know if I'd ever seen it or not. But I just kind of got the song just popped in my head, and I was like, oh, I should go look at the video for that. So I just thought that would be cool, and it was. And I'm really, um, I don't like everything Gaga does, but I've always been really impressed by her, and I think she's a monstrous talent in many respects. So I don't usually look at celebrity birth charts or anything, but I just sort of got the bug, and I thought this would be fun to demonstrate, of course, some real astrological techniques, and how they can work. Granted, I already know you know a lot about her life, and so yes, I have a bias. I'm making the chart fit to a certain degree, but I think it's just something I wanted to do kind of for fun. Assuming that this is, let's say, close to her birth time, because I think I think the day is accurate. I'm pretty sure. I actually I didn't check, so let me do that real quick. But what we can do in this situation is, yeah, March 28th, 1986. Right. So, wow, hard to believe she's only a few years older than me. That's funny. Anyway, so what we can do, as always, is we can read from the moon and the moon sign. We can just read the chart from the moon. This is something that Indian astrologers do all the time and have been doing for many years, and it works really well. We can also read from the sun too, but what I've noticed is that the sun chart, reading from the sun, is is not quite as it's not inaccurate, but for general, it's not as good for general things, because the sun is really going to be more what we give to the world, whereas the moon is what we're receiving from the world. So since most of us tend to be going through life more passively and stuff, the moon can tell us a lot more about the worldly events of life, whereas the sun chart will tell us more how we can potentially affect life, not necessarily how we are affecting it. So anyway, without further ado, I was lazy, so I didn't enter it in a software. I just want to read really simply, kind of off the cuff here. So we start with the moon in Scorpio here as the ascendant. And what we find is some interesting stuff. We find that the moon is separating from the south node, which will be opposite the north node at 1 degree, 13 minutes Scorpio, right? And the moon is it's almost a good 12 degrees away. So older texts tell us that when the moon or any planet is separating from a node by about 12 degrees, it's sort of out of the most kind of intense zone of it. But I think it's interesting because Lady Gaga, when she was growing up and stuff, and doing music before she was famous, I mean, she just worked her ass off, and she barely, um, she barely anything happened for her for years. She would just do all these gigs because she was obsessed with performing and stuff. And the nodes always speak to a definite obsession. And I think Pluto there as well is like an obsessive indicator. So we have a person who was like really obsessed with what they were doing, kind of just doing it no matter what. And a person who also has struggled a lot with like things like anorexia and bulimia and self-image problems and stuff. That's why I think she's always changing the way she looks, even now, in her videos and live and just in her daily life. It's a very interesting way that the obsession, the self-obsession, has been channeled into almost like a form of visual body art that's always evolving and changing. And we very much see her like that too. And it's interesting because this is maybe a good illustration of Neptune square the sun very closely. Neptune makes people, when it's strongly influencing something like the sun, moon, or ascendant, right? It can cause people to become very dreamy, very undefined. Sometimes it can mean body dysmorphia, And I think in her case, that makes sense again because of her struggles with bulimia and anorexia and self-image, right? It can mean body dysmorphia in the sense where you don't feel comfortable with yourself, or on some level, the way you look and the way your body is not well defined. I had a friend with Neptune square the moon, and Neptune was also close to the ascending degree, and they had some similar issues in a sense, but they didn't have like eating disorder problems, but their body was very kind of almost amorphous looking in some respects, not like absurdly amorphous, but just kind of not very well defined, very lunar, watery Neptune, right? But they also had psoriasis, right? A skin condition that causes you to get these like horrible, they almost look like welts, I think. There's different kinds, but so Neptune kind of suggests that, her public image, her sun, right, how we would see her would be somewhat amorphous, would be changeable, malleable, not well defined in a sense, and very, very glamorous. I mean, she's extremely glamorous with her music and her music videos and all that. And, power to her for that. It's not a criticism, but it's a good example of Neptune, I think. The sun also rules the 10th house, so it's kind of like a double significator of her public life and her honors and how people will see her, publicly, and the role she'll fulfill and stuff. And of course, Neptune is often associated with music and art as well. It's kind of by extension. But we also have Venus there as well, which I'll talk about in a moment. So I think that, the moon separating from the south node, it kind of, to me, it really is going to suggest a situation in which where the person goes from, being almost like having nothing, kind of just almost like throwing themselves away into their work or into whatever they're doing, right? To emerging from that sort of pit, that black hole, because Gaga has talked about how she was kind of in how she's been in bad places, especially before she became world famous. And so, struggling with the body image stuff and, just a lot of, she's pretty open about, like her earlier days when she was striving to be successful as a musician. And so I think this moon separating from the south node really shows that. Another thing that shows that is she's got the sun and Venus in the 6th house, which has to do, of course, with obstacles and hard work and disease and enemies and things like that. And so the 10th Lord sun in the 6th shows a person who had to work extremely hard to reap the results of what that really well-placed sun shows, because the sun is exalted, so it's very powerful. And I could be wrong, but I kind of wonder if Venus had made an appearance before she was born, like 7 or so days before she was born. I wonder if Venus came out from under the sun's rays, because this is a very powerful Venus. First of all, it is occidental, which means that you would only see it at night, basically. So occidental planets, again, show things happening later or things happening with more work and effort than just kind of naturally and spontaneously. Plus, Venus is in the 6th house of work and obstacles, and plus she's with the sun, but not burnt, right? Not combust, not hidden. So Venus naturally rules over not only musicians and artists, but it rules over, the feminine and the beauty and aesthetics that go along with that. And Lady Gaga really couldn't be more Venusian, in my opinion. She's extraordinarily Venusian, the way she dresses, the way she champions, like, kind of this kind of oddball version of an empowered woman that's not without its, drama queen status, as is evidenced by, a video like Paparazzi, where she like murders her boyfriend out of revenge or whatever. It's Venus in Aries. It's got a martial influence upon it, so it's very dramatic. it's very sexual, it's very intense, right? Scorpio, Aries, so on and so forth. Venus, Mars mixtures, Moon in Scorpio too, very, very powerful sexual energies. And we see all these themes in Gaga's music and in her dance choreography and in her costumes, her themes, and so on. So it's no surprise, but Venus is clearly, to me, the main significator of career matters. And that's for several reasons. It's emerging from the rays of the sun. It's with the sun, the 10th Lord, and it's in the 6th house, which is a good house for career and work matters, even though it's a normally very difficult house. It's actually the 9th from the 10th. And I've often surmised that the 9th from the 10th at the 6th, right? If it has some powerful link to the 10th, it can show a person who does things in the world that have a lot of meaning behind them, or they feel impassioned by them, and that kind of a thing. In the sense of, I'm not describing this well, sorry. In the sense of like, it's like a person who does something professionally that also has a lot of meaning and a spiritual meaning to it, basically. So we do see that with Gaga, where she, it's not so much that what she's doing is like spiritual, but then again, I don't mean that because of like, oh, it's sexy and it's this, that has nothing to do with it. I just mean that it's not necessarily that her career is like some powerful spiritual message, but just the fact that she's doing something that she absolutely loves and is impassioned about and approaches on a deeper level, at least in her own life, is a spiritual thing. In other words, like being yourself, doing what you are naturally meant to do is spiritual. So I'm not talking about like yoga and meditation and stuff like that. Although it's interesting that Gaga has had an audience with the Dalai Lama a few times, at least once, I don't know, but that's something I kind of never expected, but what do I know? So anyway, she's also got, as far as yogas go, she's got the moon, the 9th Lord in the 1st. And even though it's fallen, it doesn't really matter because it's still, that's still a powerful yoga, and Jupiter is aspecting it. And Jupiter is a planet that can greatly assist that yoga because it's well dignified and it's casting a full aspect to the moon. So we have a situation where, fallen moon, right? But Jupiter really beefs it up, and so we can see this like sort of tremendous level of success from this yoga. And it'd be really interesting to see what kind of yogas she had from her actual ascendant, if anyone ever finds out her birth time one day. The moon is in the 4th Navamsha from Cancer, which is Libra, and that's kind of interesting. That's I just wanted to see if it was better dignified or not. It's maybe a tiny bit better, but nothing to really celebrate over. And by 12th part, it would be in the 5th, 6th, 12th part from its place, which would be actually Aries. So it'd be with the sun and Venus in the 6th. So kind of just putting together that whole thing again. And I don't think we don't really have any other yogas being formed. I don't think really. No. I'm just going to look at one more thing before I continue. Oh yeah, Jupiter at 8 and something Pisces is a few degrees off, but close enough to an Antisha with Venus. Okay, and so that also bolsters her success and fortune and power, because Jupiter is very much about power in professional life, as does the fact that I almost mentioned earlier but forgot that Venus is very close to a conjunction with the North Node. They're actually moving toward one another, because the nodes are retrograde always. And so this, given the fact that Venus is with an exalted planet, and as we'll talk about in a moment, the proper Lord of Aries, Mars himself, is exalted, right? yes, right at the first degree of Capricorn. Very, very powerful support for that Venus and for that Sun, for career matters, for music. And so the North Node is just gonna increase that Venus, because classically speaking, when it's with the benefic planets, the North Node can actually cause a huge increase in what they represent. So this not only means like sexuality and kind of this goddess theme, but also, of course, like musical talent. Lady Gaga is extraordinarily musically talented. She's an excellent singer. She can play piano and sing, and she writes all of her own songs, you know, and she probably choreographs much of the dances she does, not to mention singing that stuff while she's doing all those dances. And she also has a big hand in the types of clothes she wears and what the designers design for her. So she is not just a manufactured pop star, you know, even if you don't really like Lady Gaga or respect her that much for whatever your reason is, that's totally fine. But you have to look at the facts. You know, she can sing in tune, and not only, you know, I hate that is a qualifier these days, because auto-tune, so many people can't sing in tune. Rihanna cannot sing in tune, okay, without auto-tune. Neither can Drake and a lot of those people. So Gaga can not only sing in tune, but her voice kicks ass, and she's got a very mature command over her voice. So she is very much a talented, accomplished musician, and so we just see more of that with the North Node Venus connection. And Venus too is in Taurus as well. We also see as well that Venus ruling the 7th house, the 12th house, and being posited in the 6th is not going to be great for relationships. And so this may be why a lot of her videos have this theme of volatile relationships or intense sort of sexual themes bordering on like violence and whatnot. Sometimes overtly violent, like in Paparazzi. I think she's had a lot of relationship troubles and things like that. You know, I think that's really real. Okay, moving on a bit. I got to talk about this Mars, very important, exalted lord of the lunar ascendant, right? Placed in the 3rd house, which is not the best house ever, but it is the house of performers and artists and entertainers, right? So we do see that Mars gets associated with those themes, and it's very powerful. So in the 3rd, Mars gives the ability to overcome any and all obstacles. And so again, what this points to, Mars ruling the cadent Sun, Venus, and also cadent but exalted, super hard work. This is a person who had to work extremely hard and had to overcome many, many obstacles to become highly successful. It didn't just fall into their lap. So a great example of that. Another cool thing to point out is she has 2 exalted planets and 1 planet in domicile. So this automatically makes the basis of her nativity more empowered, so to speak, more just powerful, not good, not bad, but just having more ability to like rise high in whatever she does and so on, you know, independence, fortune and things like that, just sheer power in a sense, right? So it has nothing to do with like spirituality or morality or goodness or anything like that, but just the sheer depth and breadth of like what the person is likely to accomplish on the world stage is generally more powerful when there are several planets like this in their own signs and exaltations. Now, it's not always the case, you know, the rest of the nativity has to support that, of course, but it's an indication that we can add to these other very good placements that tell us that, oh yes, okay, it's actually very very empowering for this person to have these kinds of things going on. And Mars being the ascendant lord is also, again, not only is he aspecting the Sun and widely Venus, but he's ruling them. So he's connected. Her ascendant lord, right, signifying her and her goals and things in life, is connected to her 10th house of honors and career and notoriety and stuff. So we have that direct connection happening there. And yeah, it's just a really really interesting chart, really fun to kind of just look at and delineate a little bit. I haven't talked about Mercury too much. I haven't talked about Saturn too much either. Uh, but they just didn't really catch my eye too much, I suppose. So I'm not gonna I'm not gonna force the issue there. Uh, but I think too. Let's see. Is there anything else? Uranus is square Mercury pretty close, and Mercury's retrograde. And actually, wow, Saturn's retrograde, and these two planets are retrograde as well. So a few retrograde planets in there, which just tells us again more about delays and struggle and kind of doing things her own way in a sense, even though that caused a lot of delays. I think Saturn being in the second is also kind of a delay in success or in monetary things as well, especially retrograde. So there's that kind of theme. But yeah, Uranus square Mercury definitely on some level speaks to how she's always trying to like shock everyone with what she does. I think just for the sheer reason that Mercury and Uranus are both like androgynous, outside the bounds planets in regard to gender and whatnot. And so with that Mercury Uranus contact, it probably accounts for some of her androgyny. Maybe not all of it. I mean, the nodes on the ascendant descendant definitely can account for that too. But it's fun to see those other indicators. And then what planet is her Atmakarika? Well, not surprisingly, it's Venus. So she couldn't be more Venus in that respect. And her ascendant lord rules her Atmakarika Venus, if we're going by the lunar ascendant. So we just see those themes getting repeated, right? The just the theme of very Venusian, very, very goddess like, very very out there and very musical and talented and artistic. So that's cool. And then we could just look at yogas from the sun real quick to see if anything is there. We do have the sun creating a yoga by being in Aries because he rules the fifth. And it's with Venus, which is the second and seventh lord. And I think that just, that by the general rules, even though Venus is considered a killing planet for this ascendant, I think it still adds to the power of this yoga personally. And Mars also aspects. Mars is also going to add to the power of that yoga because Mars is the ascendant lord and in an angle. And he's also the eighth lord, which adds to it. So when it comes to the solar aspect of consciousness, which is the way we contribute to the world, what we have to sort of give, our vision, the vision of truth that we embody, right? It's also very empowered. This is a person who's definitely going to make their very independent mark on the world, and maybe even get swept up in it a little bit because of that Neptune there. And Neptune is pretty close to Mars, I think, right? Yeah, it's really close, within 4 or 5 degrees. So we do see that Neptune theme again coming into play, but this time perhaps it's somebody who may get swept up in it. But I think also it may refer to the fact that Lady Gaga has like actively gone outside her boundaries in a lot of cases, not just with acting, which granted, I don't think she's the greatest actor, but I respect her for doing that. And I think also, though, she has tried to, raise awareness about certain major things in life, certain like Neptune collective crises things, like whether it was the things she did with the Dalai Lama or, I think she's done a lot to talk about like homosexual rights and, preventing rape and violence toward women. So she does have that crusading spirit there. And maybe that's part of what that Neptune is referring to. Do we have any other Raj yogas by the typical rules from the Aries solar ascendant? I don't think so. No, not really. I think that's it. It's really the sun, Sun, Venus, and Mars contact. And Mars is aspecting too, full Mars aspects. So again, very powerful Raj yogas from both ascendants. Two planets in exaltation, one in domicile, just showing a really powerful basis for fame and influence in this nativity. Okay, well, that was really fun, guys. So I really hope you enjoyed that video. And please hit like, share, check out my website for individualized readings and more, both tarot and astrology, and have a great rest of your day or evening.